The phone market is an extremely competitive space, with various manufacturers trying to bring you the best value for money that they can. Now, two phones firmly in the mid-range market, both seeking to bring you more than their price point suggests they might, are the OnePlus Nord 2 and the Poco F3. Now, of course, in order to bring them down to these competitive prices, compromises have to be made. But with the Poco F3 being one of the best value for money phones on the market right now, should you save money and buy this, or spend a tiny bit more and get the Nord 2? Is there any real difference between them? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and in this video I'll hopefully help you to decide. And while you're here, if you like this video, it would be great if you tap that thumbs up, and subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. There are a couple of things that first hit me when comparing the design of these two mid-range powerhouses. Look at them side by side and it's clear the Poco is noticeably taller and wider than the Nord 2. That means it will take up more space in your pocket or bag, and also makes it a little less practical to use one-handed. However, once you start typing away with two hands, it actually feels really good, and its thinness becomes an important factor. It's ever so slightly slimmer than the Nord 2, and when you hold it, you can feel that. Both use a similar combination of glass and plastic as a build material, so they have glass on the front and the back, but use a plastic material for the frame around the sides. The interesting thing that I found was, at least with these two colours, the Nord 2's layering under the glass on the back made it much less prone to showing fingerprints. Poco's has a much more mirror-like finish and doesn't shy away from showing you all of your palm grease in all of its hideous glory. So despite having a shiny gloss finish on the exterior, the Nord doesn't show them that obviously. There are a couple more things that make a minor difference to the experience. For instance, the overall button quality on the Nord 2 feels higher, the clicks are more solid feeling, making them seem more durable, plus the Nord 2 has an alert slider on the side and makes it really simple to switch between silent, vibrate and ring modes. Poco, however, has a physical fingerprint sensor on the side built into the power button and makes it easier and quicker to unlock. It's not to say the OnePlus's in-display sensor is bad, but the physical sensor on the Poco just feels that bit more convenient in daily usage. One last thing, Poco's has an official water and dust resistance at IP53 rating. That means it's almost completely dustproof and sprayproof. OnePlus doesn't have an official rating, but it has sealed it pretty well against spray and splashes. Now, design materials isn't the only place these two share some similarities. They share some specs, like both a Full HD 1080x2400 20:9 ratio AMOLED screens with HDR10 Plus support. There's a size difference, of course, with the Poco measuring 6.7 inches versus the OnePlus's 6.43. That means it's ever so slightly less sharp, but not enough to make any real difference. It does mean you have a larger canvas to watch your games and movies on. Poco's punch hole camera takes up a lot less space too, and being in the centre I find it a little less obstructive in the status bar than the OnePlus's larger corner camera. On paper, Poco's higher refresh rate does mean it's capable of reaching up to 120 frames per second versus 90 frames per second on the OnePlus. But in most instances with popular apps and games, it's really difficult to tell any real tangible difference with the naked eye. If you look closely, you might notice it when scrolling up and down the app drawer, but 90Hz is more than fast enough to give you that smooth, sharp effect. Where we noticed a bigger difference was in color calibration. In their default modes, with OnePlus in Vivid and Poco's in Auto mode, the OnePlus does seem to boost the reds too much, giving my skin tone as an example a much pinker look than it is naturally. In fact, even looking at white screens, the overall tone is warmer and pinkish. Poco's Auto mode seemed better in that regard, balancing the colours without losing that vibrant dynamic look. It was a lot cleaner and natural looking. OnePlus's can be switched to a more gentle mode that tones it down, but Poco software offers even more here. Away from its Auto mode, there are several other default calibrations to choose from, including a list of advanced options and the ability to tune the colour to your preference. The one area the OnePlus does do better is in viewing angles. Looking at the screen from less than head-on angles, you lose a lot more of the brightness on the Poco screen than you do on the OnePlus. It seems to boost the contrast more generally too, which is sometimes good, and sometimes not so good, depending on the kind of content you're watching. For live action, real scenes, it makes it seem too dark and crushed and a bit unnatural. For colour-rich animation, comics and general interface, it looks fab. Personally though, for watching movies and YouTube videos, I preferred the Poco. Both have similar but not identical approaches to software too. For instance, they'll both let you install custom icon packs without needing an additional launcher, and they have their own takes on always-on display customization, live wallpapers and such. But they both offer them. OnePlus's interface is a bit cleaner though, and it has a lot of the personalization options within the same menu, whereas Poco likes to complicate things, putting everything in its own sub-menu, making it a little bit more cumbersome. Moving on to performance, and when talking raw speed and power, both of them have similar performance, but they're not the same. Poco has gone with the Snapdragon 870 processor, whereas OnePlus has the MediaTek Dimensity 1200 AI. In daily use, the two phones are both generally quick and responsive, to the point where we think you'd be quite happy with either. However, you stick them side by side and load games, the Poco did seem to fairly consistently load them just that little bit quicker. And for those interested in benchmarks, running the Geekbench 5 CPU test, it was finished when the OnePlus was still at about 90%. Understandably then, both its single and multi-core scores were higher than the OnePlus, so it clearly has a bit more power to it. Battery is a similar story, with both featuring capacities that are basically the same. It's 4,500 versus 4,520 mAh. And in our daily testing, they were both very capable of getting through the day. In fact, with my sort of average usage, which I'd consider moderate, I'd get through a day and a half without an issue from either. However, the Poco was the one that I'd charge every night, because its charging speeds don't match OnePlus. OnePlus's 65-watt warp charge can do a full 100% charge in little over half an hour. Poco's is just over half that power and takes more than 50 minutes to do the same. Moving on to cameras, and again, there are similarities. Both have a primary and an ultra-wide camera, with similar pixel counts. OnePlus went with a 50 megapixel main, Poco has 48 megapixels, but both ultra-wides are 8 megapixels. The third cameras are different though. OnePlus has a black and white sensor for additional data, and Poco has a macro sensor to get better close-ups. But the results from that camera are quite harsh. In general daily usage, what we found most of the time is that the primary camera on the OnePlus delivered better results than the Poco. Colours and depth were better and more natural, considerably so when shooting plants in particular. Poco's looked too dark and contrast heavy a lot of the time. OnePlus's primary camera was also better in low light situations, delivering more natural and sharper images. Handheld shots with the Poco were easier to mess up and make blurry in these instances. Switch to ultra-wides though, and it is a different story. OnePlus's ultra-wide consistently delivers harsh, crushed shots lacking in any vibrancy. Poco's was much better. If you only really use the one main camera on your phones, the OnePlus is the better choice here. It has the much better primary camera. Now overall, regardless of this comparison, I think the Poco F3 is a no-brainer. The phone you get for the money is fantastic. It does all the important things well. In my mind, the performance is slightly better, and I prefer the screen, plus it's a bit cheaper too. Where OnePlus has the advantage is in charging speeds and the cleaner software experience, plus it has the better main camera. Both offer great value for money and fairness, so the choice, boiling it down to basics, is really between the better camera on the Nord or the better display and performance on the Poco. So there you have it. I've been Cam, I'm at Cam Bunton on social media. If you want to get in touch with me on there, you can do. Let me know in the comments which of these two you think you're going to go for. If you like this video, again, please do hit that thumbs up, it helps us a lot. Tap subscribe and the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.